Hi, my name's Dan, and this video is one in a series of videos about blueprint scripting in Unreal. And in this one, I'm going to show you some control flow nodes which can alter the flow of your scripts. Okay, so the setup I've got here is I've got a standard third-person template map. I've just turned the lighting down in the map so that I can use lights and they can be seen quite clearly. I've got a little blueprint that I've created, and inside this blueprint I've got a couple of lights. I've got a plate that you can step on, and I've got a couple of other things set up. Well, I've got a variable that's set up so that if you stand on the plate, it becomes true, and if you go off, it's false. I don't want to focus on variables this time. That's a subject for another video. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what's happening in the game when you press play, which is nothing's happening with this pressure plate at all at the moment. I've got a red light and a blue light, but they're both turned off. And I'm going to go into the script and use the event begin play node. And off that, I'm going to let's drag in the reference to the red lights. I'm going to make the red light flash on and then off. So set visibility. Just zoom in slightly, move this a bit further up. And I'm going to make it true visibility so that it's switched on. Then I'm going to put in a delay node. There are various nodes that you can use that do stuff to do with timing, and delay is one of them, but it's a little bit odd in that it doesn't always work how you think it might. I'm going to put it on to 2 seconds, and then I'm going to switch that light off again. So when we start playing the level, it will show the light for 2 seconds, and then we'll switch off. We need to tell it which light we're setting the visibility for. I just want to show you the fact that you can, with data nodes, you can put in more than one place for the data to go out to. I could have replicated that, so that's the exactly the same as if I'd dragged that one in there and put it up to there. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, so we'll go back to where we were. Having that in there. Another thing I want to show you is reroute nodes, because getting these wires into the positions that you want them, it can get a bit messy at times. If you mouse over a wire, it goes, it glows, and then you double click and it adds a reroute node, and then you can drag that around, and that allows you to reposition your wires. Okay, so I'm just going to compile that and run it, and hopefully that will switch the lights on and then off after a few seconds. Something's gone wrong, so I need to fix that. Right, so what's happened is I've copied that visibility node, and it's switching it on there, and it's switching it on there, so I need to turn that off there. Let's try again. Compile, so light on, light off. Exactly what I was expecting or hoping for. Right. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, let's make it flash and keep going. So let's put another delay node in. I'm just copying that, doing Control-C and then Control-V to copy that node. And then I'm going to take the output from completed of that delay and feed it back into that node there, which is where we started. Now this is, again, we've got nodes, wires that are a bit messy to see, so I'm going to just double click to add a reroute node there, and another one there to make it easier to see. So what I've effectively done is I've created this infinite loop where it's going to go in here and go around and go back out again. So let's see if that works. On, off, on, off. That's fine, that's working. Okay. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, going back into the script, is I'm going to actually make it, I've got 2 lights in here, I've got a red light and a blue light, and I'm going to make it alternate which light it's going to use. And so I'm going to introduce an extra node here, which is a flip-flop node. Okay. Flip-flop. Now, when execution comes into this node the first time, it goes through the A output node. When it comes in the second time, it'll come through the B node, and it'll alternate. So go A, then B, then A, then B. We need to feed that into there as it comes around, and we need a completely similar but different section. I'm just highlighting all those. Move these bits out of the way, and I'm going to change this so that it does the blue light, so I can just drag the blue light in to target. And there's a reroute node that I copied. So the B execution is going to come down and do the blue light. And then similarly, when that's completed, I want that to feed back to there. Okay. Right. Let's see what happens. Let's change the durations. They're quite long, so let's make them half a second each. I don't know if you can see that. It's just typing in the 1.5. So I'll get that flashing going a bit faster. Right, compile. And play. Red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. Excellent. That's what we wanted to show. So that's the flip-flop node working. Now I'm going to change this to make it slightly different. I'm going to use a branch. So if you've done programming, which it would be helpful if you had done some programming, this is the equivalent to a if statement in most programming languages. So it does a test, and if it's true, it'll go down this route, the A route, and if it's false, it'll go down that route. Once again, we want to loop these round so that it'll keep repeating. And this has a condition. So a condition is what's called a Boolean, and it's a variable that holds either true or false. And I happen to have a variable. Again, I don't want to focus on variables and how they're used at this point, but I've set up a variable so that when the actor, which is the player character, stands on the pressure plate, it turns this variable on, and when they step off the pressure plate, it turns it off. So we can use that as an on-off. I'm going to check the status of that variable, and if the variable is true, it'll go through this route, which will give us the red light. And if it's false, it should go down the blue light. So let's give that a go. So we're not on, so the blue light's flashing, and as soon as we step on, it turns to red. So we're switching the way that it's going, and that's using a branch node. This is one of the things that I found hard to get to grips with when I first started doing blueprint scripting, is to remember that if is branch. Okay, right. So the next thing I'm going to do is thinking about loops. So at the moment, we've got an infinite loop that's flicking round and around, which we've done by using wires, execution wires. There is a node which is, in fact, there are several loop nodes, but there is, if you're used to, again, used to programming while loops. So in theory, we're going to remove that a bit. So in theory, this loop will go through, we'll take the branch out. I'm actually going to do a not on there. Brilliant. So I've added a not on there. So what should be happening here is that when you're not on the plate, it goes through this loop and it'll be flashing the red light. And then the completed node execution will come to the completed node when the while loop is finished, which should mean it will then flash the blue light once when you stand on the pressure plate. Let's see what happens. I actually know what's going to happen here, but I'm going to do some experimentation. So it didn't do what maybe in theory you'd expect, and we've got an error which says an infinite loop has been detected. Now, Unreal has this built-in setting when you click play that if it goes round and round something a certain number of times without any change, then it detects that as being an infinite loop. It's a kind of protective thing for itself. And I believe the number that it's set to as a default is 1 million. So it's been around that loop 1 million times. And that's not what we expect to happen. And if you remember a little bit earlier, I said that the delay node is a little bit odd in the way that it works. What's happening if you put it in a while loop is that it will trigger off down here, do the set visibility, and then it'll say, oh, I've met a delay. Right, well, I might as well carry on with the other things, and it spawns off what's called a process or a parallel thread, waiting for this, which will do something when that's sorted out. But it actually goes back to the while loop and checks again and goes round and round and round. So it's doing that very, very quickly. The delay loop isn't doing what we're expecting it to inside this loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to abandon the lights at this point because I just want to show you some loops, and I think I'll sequence. And the delays on the lights are not working in this circumstance. I'm going to abandon this variable, and I'm just going to use the event actor begin overlap. Now I've set up a variable here that's an integer, so we're going to use that to count. I'm going to put in a while loop, which is what I wanted to show. While, and then the condition is going to be if this integer is less than, I'm going to use a less than node, and I'm going to get it to count up to 9. So if it's less than 10, then I'm going to print string, and I'm just going to get it to tell us what the nature of the value is that the counter's got. And the other thing that I mustn't forget in this, inside the loop, is that I'm actually going to also increase the value of the counter every time we go through the loop. So I'm going to drag that in again and use an increment node. There we go. So now what this should do is it should count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then stop. And then when you come out of completed, I'm going to do another print string. And I'm just going to say finished. And the reason I've changed this so that it's on the event actor begin overlap is so that it doesn't all happen just instantly as we start playing. So we can trigger this by stepping on the plate. And there we go. You can see the text on the left-hand side. It disappears quite quickly. Let's run it again. Just get finished. The reason why that's just given finished is because every time we go on there, well, the first time we go on there, the counter counts up. But after that, the counter is still at 10. So when we do the finished, I'm also going to reset this counter to 0. So just put a set for that variable in, and it's setting it to 0. Let's try that again. So, and of course, the text goes in at the top, so each line goes successfully on top of the previous lines, and that's working as we expect. So that's doing the while loop and going through that number of times. There is another way of doing a similar loop, which is a for loop, which allows you to go around in circles, and it sets. You can set the number of times that happens. So for loop, and in this case, you no longer need this counter variable because it has some built-in counter, is called the index. And each time through the index, it gives you a different number and increases it by 1 each time through. So I'm going to do the first index is 0 and last index, we're actually going to make it 20. There. We can get rid of those. And we don't need to add on the counter, because we're not using that anymore. We don't need to reset the counter because it will do that automatically for us. But we might still want something to say finished. So print string finished. Fine. Let's demonstrate that. Hopefully that's going to work. So we step on the plate and we get 0 to 20 and then finished. Right, one last thing to show you in terms of control flow nodes. I'm going to keep a couple of print strings in there. And that's a sequence node. So, so far, if we wanted things to happen one after another, we've dragged them through in the control flow with these white wires. Sometimes it can get a bit messy, and this is just a way of, your scripts get very long. And if you want to think about having sections of your script and then do one section followed by another section followed by another section, you can use a sequence node like this. And what this does is it runs through, runs out, then 0, and then it goes then 1, and you can add more pins. You can have as many in the sequence as you want. And I'm just going to add a third one in here. I've added too many pins, but that's okay. So I've got hello finished. Maybe I'll do goodbye there. So it should do those three in order. I could have equally well just chained that round like there, but this is just to show you this node and the way that it works. So we're going to step on the plate, and it's gone in reverse order as we see it. Hello, finished, goodbye. And you have to read upwards from the bottom. Okay. So there are more control flow nodes that I haven't shown you, but we haven't got the other bits of programming that we need to understand those, particularly for each loops. There are all sorts of ways that you can use these, but that's a quick overview of ways that you can control the flow of your scripts in Blueprint. And that's it from me for now.